Hi, my name is Jerome Bradford, and this is my music journal, where we explore music album by album.
People let you go to the concert. Like, why was that?
Just jump right into it. So I'll let you go.
It's fine. Thanks for having me on, Jerome. First things first, do a little bit of housekeeping. Sunday nights at 8 p.m., I host a show called Sub-Zero with the infinite galaxy, the infinite universe of independent music from 8 until the very end of the night. Um, some of the best in indie alternative, post-punk, punk, proto-punk, lo-fi. There's even an hour dedicated to shoegaze, dream
Oh
pop,
man.
space rock, some of the best of the past, present, and future of underground music. Finally, a destination for independent music on Mavradio, Sunday nights, Sub-Zero. And we have actually made a big announcement on Sunday the 10th. And it goes like this. My first guests on the show, and this is historical, the Hotman sisters, UNO alumni, fantastic group, reunited, and I will be interviewing them on location in Colorado at their reunion shows.
Nice. And I want to say, definitely listen to that show because that continues a long tradition in underground music being plugged and played on college radio. I was in a class next to the station. I heard some Best Coast, so that was sweet. Like my heart rang. Like I was like, oh, Best Coast. So gotta love Best Coast.
Best
Nice.
Coast,
Yeah.
yes. And another thing too, I think we should start out by giving that little disclaimer. We are going to be discussing a very offensive
Yes.
record, a deliberately offensive record. And the views that are discussed and the views that are mentioned on this album, as well as some of the views that are going to be mentioned in this broadcast, do not necessarily reflect those of Mavradio, the University of Nebraska at Omaha, the College of Fine Arts and Media, or the College of Communication. They're strictly the opinions of the artists that have recorded it, myself and Jerome.
Nice. Well, Michael, one thing that I want to start with, listening to this album, and I think we talked a little bit about this online or via text. So there's that connection to protest music and minority people and people of color. And I always saw that as very either acoustic or peaceful. But that opening on this Body Count album is very much like, I mean, you get that Black Panther energy where like, no, this isn't gonna be peaceful. Like I've had enough.
Yeah, Ice-T at that point in his career, and still inherently because he is Ice-T, to him, peace was not an option when he wrote this album.
Yeah.
And the reason for that was we got to look back in 1992 and what
Mhm.
1992 was in terms of not only heavy metal and not only in punk rock, but also in hip hop and in Black history,
Mm.
because at that time it was a massive wind of change. Michael Jackson put out a record that year, and it sold like a Michael Jackson record should, but it didn't catch fire the way it did before. Something was very different in pop culture at that time, and a lot of it is because a lot of the innocence that people had when it came to entertainment was gone. The Pandora's box had already been opened several years before because we had Appetite for Destruction
Yeah.
with all of the misogyny and all of the aggression that was, and a lot of it glorified in a lot of these lyrics. Heavy metal tastes were changing. Def Leppard came out with an album around the same time in 1992, and it didn't catch fire the way that Hysteria and Pyromania did because, well, people wanted their rock to be tougher,
Mhm.
angrier, grittier. They wanted something that was just a little bit more than she's my cherry pie,
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
even Warrant themselves tried to toughen up their sound, and it completely backfired. Nobody cared about that album.
Yeah.
It was just an absolute comatose, dead in the water release. And they themselves, when they walked into Sony and they saw that their cherry pie poster behind the secretary's desk was gone and replaced by Alice in Chains, it'll tell you things were different now.
Yeah.
You know,
And
Nirvana's Nevermind came out maybe about 6 months before Body Count, but as they were recording it, and even before that, I will argue that Ice-T just saw dollar signs and he knew where everything was going. He was coming right off of Original Gangster, and with all of the great success that was. It was a 5-star hip hop album that truly defined who he was and what his career was and set him for life. Now, I'm going to take the same mentality and take it to a rock audience. All the skaters that listen to me, all the headbangers that listen to me, and all of the Midwestern headbanger skater kids and all of the rock audiences that love this controversy stuff. This sticker that they're putting on all of the compact discs now was pretty new at that time. The parental advisory sticker, he wanted to cut a record to deliberately have that sticker on it because he knew controversy creates cash. And that was his mentality. And that also, he had a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah. And, Michael, not to interject, I would like to add, while we're on the subject of rock and rap, I think when we look at rap, that friendly rapper was fading. Like Hammer was out. Like there was none of that. I'm putting on sparkly pants. I'm doing Hammer time for you.
Yeah,
and
Hammer time was up.
Yeah, it was off. And even when you look at the rock side, I always like to state this about rock. We've talked about my 2 years in LA that I lived there. That Beach Boys, Black Flag, 2 bands from LA. That in that underground hardcore world, like even in LA, that disillusionment of this is a peaceful place was being washed away by bands like Black Flag, Suicidal Tendencies. I like to always say, I feel like this is a rougher album, so we can have those conversations. This is a time when you could go to a punk show, you could get your head kicked in. This wasn't Blink 182. This was yeah.
That's why everybody gives Green Day such a knock, because it was a very violent scene.
Yeah.
And it was, quite frankly, a lot of the punks versus the cops. Cops were shot and shows down. And Ice-T was friends with Henry Rollins. He was in tune with that.
Yeah.
And he wanted to engage that audience, and Body Count was the result.
Yeah.
So that was the game plan all along. I want to cut a record where we could open for Slayer, and we could have all those guys that listen to Suicidal Tendencies and Bad Brains and Black Flag, all of them, and Fugazi, and just all of them, to mosh this. And here's the thing. He wasn't even really rapping on this album.
Yeah, no, that, I re-listened to it yesterday, and that's where I was taken back by. I have forgot he doesn't rap on this album. This is him doing more metal, more harder rock vocals. This is like not rapping. I feel like there's a little bit of a spoken word on it too in the songs, in the interludes, but
introduce the world to a style that was already forming, because we first saw it with Walk This Way with Run DMC and Aerosmith, and it was fun and groovy and everything. And then we kind of saw a little bit more of that happening with Bring the Noise, with Public Enemy and Anthrax fusing it. And he was like, I got to take it harder. And he did, so this is a very, Ice-T does 2 things. He makes a statement, but he doesn't make a statement, because the other half is him being satirical. Some of the stuff he says and does on this album are so far out. The first thing you hear on this album is him murdering a police officer. It's a sketch where he's shooting a cop, and you're not listening
Yeah.
to Winger. You're
Yeah.
not listening to
Yeah.
Slaughter.
You
You
know,
know,
even some ways add to that. You know, you're not listening to a James Brown trying to calm down, you know, a city after the riots, or Sly and the Family Stone trying to bring like this peaceful protest. Is like, nope, this is very different.
this was the ghetto version of Venom, Welcome to Hell.
Yeah, it was.
It's not what's going on, it's Welcome to Hell, because that was what was going on. I mean, the Rodney King beating was such a big conversation, and references are made to it, and a lot of his tropes that he portrays in a lot of the sketches in between songs are very much in response to that.
Yes.
Not just with the beating, but also the not guilty verdict from the trial with the three police officers caught on camera, you know, and it was LA was very angry.
Yeah.
And instead of getting turntables this time, he's getting guitars.
Yeah.
Introduce the world to Ernie C., who is a very unsung guitar hero in his way. He does a lot of the Eddie Van Halen shredding, but also he's also very true to the Jimi Hendrix type of rock and roll, and kind of does the riffs. He riffs kind of in a way that's not unlike Suicidal Tendencies or Black Flag, and you know, so it's not a rap guy trying to do metal. It is a guy that loves heavy metal that's doing a project with a rapper who loves punk rock and heavy metal. And, you know, cutting out all of these lyrics that were made to piss off your parents, your teachers, every politician you can think of that wants that sticker on there. There were people that wanted the album banned. And matter of fact, let's get the because this is so defining of the album right there. We're gonna get the elephant in the room out of the way.
Right. And I'm taking so many notes that I'm like, okay, I'm trying to find and make a certain point. So I'll let you go off on your.
I'll just go straight into it.
Okay.
There was a song called Cop Killer. You know, it was on the original pressing, and it's self-explanatory. When he played it live, he would take the mic and point it to the fans, and he would ask them, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Crowd goes, "Cop Killer." And it was so offensive to police officers, to conservatives. They were not in on the joke. Matter of fact, they felt the joke was pointed right at them, and it was in a lot of ways. But by the same token, it's caused a stir that it made the album instantly notorious before anybody bought it. And it was so controversial, even when the album was gold and selling. Warner Brothers don't know where they stood on it, but they kept pressing the album. Ice-T finally had to get in front of it in a press conference and saying, fine, I will pull the song from the record, because, well, he felt that the damage, you know, that he wanted to make was done, number one. And two, he replaced it with a rock remix of Freedom of Speech from Original Gangster, which, in my opinion, was equally as effective, because what's the situation here? You have all of these people telling him, hey, you know, your album is offensive. It should not be out in society. It should never exist. Record labels, record companies, record stores, get rid of it. And it's like, what about freedom of speech? So that was the biggest impetus right there for freedom of speech, because they were coming after him double the way they were coming after Axl Rose.
Oh, yes, definitely. You know, also I want to mention too, I think he did a similar thing that NWA did. I have it in my notes here that he kind of held up a mirror to the can't talk today. African American community as well. You know, I'm a TV nerd. I follow the history of house shows impact times as well. So in Body Count, he mentions the Cosby Show, and you know that Cosby Show was represented Black and African Americans that have moved from Watts, that had moved into the suburbs, that didn't necessarily know what was happening there, or had turned their backs on that, or had preconceived ideas that, hey, if you're stuck down there, you want to be stuck down there.
Or other yet, Bill Cosby was someone with a PhD education who can afford that. There's
Yeah,
still a lot of intelligent people that live in Watts, that
yeah.
live in Inglewood, and
Mm,
just simply do not qualify for the FAFSA for
mm.
whatever reason,
No.
um, or they don't have the ability to sacrifice their two full-time jobs to take an
Mm,
education.
yeah.
So here we are, a representation of a family on TV that's supposed to be the colonist idea of what a good minority family is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And Ice-T's like, that's not real life.
Mm,
And as much as we would like that utopia, so many of us are not able to achieve that. I think you and I are very lucky men to be able to have the privilege to go to university.
yeah.
But are we ever going to be like the Huxtables?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm working as hard as I can. I can tell you.
Yeah, me too. It's like,
you
but
know,
that's a high one to reach. And I think kind of the thing that makes that such an interesting point is because Cosby and later in his life echoed those sentiments as though it was just that easy to reach. It's like it's not that easy to reach. Like,
yeah, it's a glass ceiling, or it's one of those imaginary brass rungs to a lot of
yeah,
people.
mm,
And it was such the impetus for Ice-T wanting to make an album like this.
yeah,
I mean, he did it with Original Gangster technically, so he was already on course for making music like this. And that this is the kind of album where not only he attacking the show, he was hoping that Bill Cosby was going to comment on it and say, "You need to take out the lyrics of that song and put something else
er,
to uprise our community."
yeah. He was hoping he would get the infamous Eddie Murphy call. That Eddie apparently Bill Cosby called Eddie Murphy and was like, "You're funny, but I just don't like the way you cuss. It brings the rest of us down." And Eddie was like, "Sorry, we're not a monolith." He didn't say in such words, but that was the gist of his point.
Yeah, but Ice-T
Yeah.
blatantly is not a pop artist. The pop
Yeah.
music, the gold records, the audiences came to him. He was
Yeah.
just doing his thing.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And with,
He
go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we keep stepping over each other. Yeah, you mentioned how he gets ahead of things. He was one of the first rap artists. He talked about this in a special that he didn't jump initially at his record deal. He turned the first deal down. This exec is like, "What? Like, I'm offering you money." He basically said, "I made it this far without you. If I sign with you, I need something more." Like, so this just shows how forward thinking he is. He saw that harsher music was coming around via this album.
A hair metal band would have probably jumped on that record and got totally messed up by the
Yeah,
record label.
yeah,
But he already had the intelligence
yeah.
and the education on what slave labor is, where he was
Right.
like, "Man, I
Like,
know what you're making me
yeah,
sign. I'm not doing that."
yeah,
But then you got then you got these guys, like guys like Dawkins, who are like, "Oh,
yeah, yeah.
I'm a millionaire." You
Right.
know,
You think?
you know, it was not the slight on any of that other metal bands before them, because this album is full of
Oh,
some serious guitar
oh, it
work.
is. Great guitar work. Great drums too, and even the content of the album is just totally great. I'm going over my notes here, so sorry. I'm paying attention to you.
No, you're good. I thought you had something, so that's all right. um
Well,
but we gotta make, yeah,
no,
gotta
like
make mention too that Ice-T didn't have to make this record. He didn't need to.
no,
He wanted to, because he was
yeah,
already riding off of Original Gangster, Certified Gold, and he was already famous. because
Yeah.
he was in New Jack City where he played a cop.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was like,
Yeah.
he got the lead role in New Jack City alongside, um, man, and I forget his name. What's wrong with me? It's a Sunday.
Yeah.
Wesley Snipes.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
speaking like Chris Rock was in that too.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, that
Pookie.
movie has one of my most weirdest favorite lines. Remember when I stole this turkey for you? I'm like, well, I've told my partner in past days that someday we're gonna have an argument. I don't say that, it won't make sense, but I'm just gonna quote that movie. Like, I'm gonna have to quote it. Like, and you're gonna be like, what the heck?
It was really surreal though, seeing such good acting from
Yeah.
Chris Rock too. Because he made a pretty natural crackhead.
Yeah. He did. Yeah. I was
Yeah.
like, yeah.
And we see Ice-T against
Mhm.
cast already against type,
Yeah.
playing a police officer,
Mhm.
an undercover cop and everything. And after having all of that notoriety and already all of that controversy, he wanted to make it worse, and do his own Appetite for
Right.
Destruction. And it's we knew immediately coming off, because people already heard murmurs about the Cop Killer song,
Yeah.
what was going to happen. And by the time the video for There Goes the Neighborhood hit
Oh
MTV,
man, yeah. Yeah.
what an ugly, dark video that was.
Yeah. Listeners, go check that out. But we did give you warning. It is a dark video, like very dark. Yeah.
You're
And
probably going to find the uncensored version too.
yeah. And this
You know.
album has some dark themes, the KKK, I'll say explicit
Yeah.
word. Like, yeah, that.
Yeah. That's a banned word in my vocabulary.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
and it does touch on the fact that, sometimes you can raise a kid there's this old quote comedian said, be careful who you hate because your kid may wind up loving them. Like, so, and I think that video touches on that content touches on that, but just in a, hyper way.
He really wanted to go after Bush and
Yeah.
and Dan Quayle and
Yeah.
all of them, that were, in power at that time, deliberately, by putting in that trope, where, a young black man kills his mom because she's white, or something, that far out, where to him, he was making something satire, because what he wanted was, like kids going to lunch and laughing it up about what they were listening to when their parents, because if you thought Get in the Ring from Guns N' Roses was bad, Ice-T took it to another level with some of the stuff he was talking about.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah. It was just such a fever pitch. I mean, at the same time that they were recording this album, a band in LA was formed by a guitarist in a funk band by the name of Tom Morello, and he put together Rage Against the Machine, and they put out their first demo just very shortly after they finished recording. So, because they were already playing gigs, that there was a beginning of a notoriety that was happening with that style of music. And Tom Morello was like, you know what, with my Harvard education, I don't know if I could make an album, this offensive, but I can make people think.
Yeah.
And we were changing mentalities. Nirvana Nevermind was exploding and getting rid of all of the hair metal. And for better or worse, it wasn't the exact blueprint, but it certainly was the impetus of all the sophomoric new metal that was going to come out 3 or 4 years later. Because all those bands started forming afterwards, and look at their themes. Misogynistic, You know, they
Yeah.
were talking about glorified aggression.
Yeah.
They were talking about, you know, drug use and stuff. And look at those lyrics, and some of it, you know, was just so much very like their own version of Body Count, the
Mm.
sequel, the
Yeah.
Grease 2 of Body Count, in my opinion, was the entire new metal scene. I don't like
Yeah.
none of those bands. No Limp Bizkit, no Korn,
Mm.
no Coal Chamber, none of them.
Mm.
That
Yeah,
stuff was crap.
I even see this album echoed in even some the New York hardcore stuff. I mean, granted, it was recorded in LA, but New York hardcore, I feel like around that time started to, you had rumblings before, but started to get very hip hop heavy, that look, that type of aggression. So this album not only touched people in LA, but on different coasts as well.
Yeah, it was almost like a perfect storm, because to
Mm,
come out with this album in 1992, when we were coming off of groups like PM Dawn
mm,
and Arrested Development,
yeah,
not the TV show, but the hip hop group with
mm,
Tennessee.
yeah.
Um, you know, I like them, you know, and
Yeah.
Dion Ferris is a good singer too. But you know, one thing is they were so polite. I'm not surprised they couldn't come up with a good follow-up. It just wasn't the time for that. Right now, there was all of this pent-up anger because of a nation in recession, because of a Gulf War that really didn't solve a whole lot. Um, People were watching, you know, riots happen over racial issues, and you know, we watched artists express themselves best they could and get censored for it. I mean, Ice-T wanted to attract that sticker and make sure that that sticker got on his album because it was like a medal of honor to him. But you got, you know, groups that are just putting out songs about sex, and they're putting a sticker on it. You know, they put it on Madonna's album, and
Mm.
what harm is that? Because if you listen to some of the top 100 right now, how
Yeah.
many artists are doing songs that are not like hers? Which, by the way, you know, she stole everything from Janet Jackson, but you know, that I digress.
We'll have to make that a topic. Hey, maybe we
No, we're not
have
gonna
enough.
go there.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
go there, you know, there's just we're probably gonna end up, you know, just arguing over the same points to each other.
Right.
um, we'll just agree that they're two different separate artists,
Or
and
yeah.
but um, this was just a sign of the times. You
Mm,
know, heavy metal, as you knew, was dead, and it was going underground, you know, and it was going around because they wanted their metal more obscene, more aggression. Bands, he saw bands like Metallica and Megadeth and Pantera slowly coming up the ranks,
mm.
you know, and like, you know what, I could do that too.
Yeah.
And he
And he
did.
did it well. I mean, you touched on it before. He did it well. Like, this was not some rapper trying to play a rock star in a band. This was a rapper who was smart, was influenced by that music, and wanted to make an album. I think a lot of listeners today don't realize that that's very hard to do, because now we have a lot of rappers, they'll jump into a rock album, like P. Diddy had a rock album, and
Why did you
it's
bring
like,
that one up? I've been
yeah,
trying to forget that one for how many? Oh,
I'm just like, this
oh.
guy, yeah, you know,
And then Sendog from Cypress Hill tried to put something out. You
yeah,
know, like, oh, you know, I didn't even like Prophets of Rage. You know,
yeah,
I appreciated Rage Against the Machine for what they did. You know,
mm,
but I was
yeah,
something about Prophets of Rage that just wasn't groundbreaking.
yeah.
It
And
was
I
just so
think it
yeah.
has to be organic. I think what we have right now, we have rappers wanting to do it just to say I made a rock album. That's different from wanting to make a great body of work and truly be inspired by the music.
And I think Ice T was able to get away with this because he went to those shows.
Yeah.
You know, he likes the music.
Mm.
Yeah, and granted, it's hard to follow up an album like this.
Mm.
And we got to admit too, you know, I mean, if we're going to be completely honest, this isn't the kind of album that you want to spin every single day, because sometimes the satire and the anger and all of that, it's deliberately so immature that, you know, if you're listening to it every day, you're probably somebody I'm going to be terribly afraid of. You know,
Yeah, you
I
definitely don't want this on 24/7,
so it's going
you
to do
know.
something to you.
Yeah. Don't
You know,
don't have it in that baby shark mentality, right?
oh, oh I put on body count every day of the week if I never had to hear Baby Shark again. So I don't know about that. I'm just Baby Shark fans. I'm kidding.
Right,
I'm kidding.
right.
You know, it's just a kind of album that, you know, if you're trying to rebel against your teachers, your parents, your schools, your
Yes.
establishment, this is an instant go-to
Yep.
that's going to piss them
It's
off.
that album, yeah. It has
Yeah,
some very important social messages, but yeah, it's one of those albums too that's gonna fall in that. Why is my kid listening to this?
and it all comes down to the fact that there are so many unsolved issues
Mm.
that we're still talking about in 2022. And what we're talking, what is it, 30 years now?
Yeah, it's about 30 years, I believe.
That album's been out for 30 years and we
Yeah.
still haven't learned. I was about to throw in a body count word right now, but um that album's been out for 30 years and we're still talking about the same crap.
Mm.
You know, so I mean, that's such a go-to album for not only protesters, but people that are just tired of this
Yes.
crap. And they can have a good laugh about it, because anybody within an earshot of it that doesn't agree with it, you're going to see them lose their crap.
Yeah. I will even say, I think we think, like you said, I think we think of that context of this album and the time it came, which is very important to that period. But I think this is an album now too that will apply to some moderate Democrat politicians. I think some of them will lose, their crap about it too.
Oh, he would definitely go after that,
Yeah.
because guess who was also about all those stickers? Al
Yeah.
Gore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Al, you know, and his wife Tipper Gore, they were all about censoring artists and, you know, making sure that offensive lyrics didn't come make it, just because her daughters, who she was not supervising at the time, listened to Darling
Yeah.
Nikki. and,
Right.
and, and she didn't realize that the guy singing Purple Rain had a different side to him.
Right. Yeah.
I guess, well, I guess you didn't see the movie, did you?
Right. I guess you did. Or even even the videos, like when doves cry,
I mean, your dad's a politician, but you don't have cable. How do you
right.
not? How do you miss this? It's
Yeah.
Prince,
Yeah.
you know, and you know, and they make it so that, I mean, Ice-T is just noticing here that they're going to put it on the artists to try to, you know, do the disciplining when it comes to messages of
Man.
appropriate measures and appropriate behavior and appropriate conduct. Um, that's not his job. That's your job.
Oh, I always say one of the greatest interviews that I've seen and the greatest quotes. Cameron was on Bill O'Reilly. Bill O'Reilly said, "Do you have anything to say to yourself about your music content? Is horrible, is apprehensible?" Cameron looked him square in the eye and said, "That's good that you think that, because you know what? I don't have anything to say because I'm not the parent. I don't control if your kid listens to my CD or not." He's like, "I'm not supposed to be a role model to your kids. I'm not supposed to tell them how to conduct their lives. I'm expressing my artistic freedom."
And as much as, and we don't want to be critical and blanket every single parent
Yeah,
at
true.
the
Yeah.
time, because some of them, there are parents that
They
honestly
get
do
it.
try their best, but what necessitated an album like Body Count? There's something that's got to be going on in some of these homes where the kids are so mad that the only thing they can relate to is an offensive Body Count album.
Yeah. And I think
So, yeah,
we can take that out into a larger picture too. What is happening in the world that negates a album like this? Like, it's not like he was just making this stuff up. These were real world issues. So maybe instead of getting mad at the album, get mad at the conditions that he's talking about.
police have a very, very difficult job and a very thankless one. There are cops that want to actually make a difference.
Yes.
There
Yeah,
are
and they
cops,
are. We
yeah,
should say that I've met plenty of cops that actually do want to make a difference.
yeah, and there are, are cops that, need to be in check, and, the ones that are not, getting proper, I guess I'll just straight out say it, the ones that know they have qualified immunity and try to get away with it, are the ones that Ice T
Is
is really
referring
trying to
to.
come, yeah, he's trying to come after,
Yeah.
because, a lot of people that have listened to this album are not from Los Angeles. I've dealt, and I'm not going to turn this on me, it's not
Mm,
about me, but I've dealt with LAPD
mm,
before, and some of it is a stereotype, some of it isn't.
mm, yeah,
Sometimes, a police department in certain cities is so huge, how can you have a corporation like a PayPal or a Microsoft and know that your employees are coming back from lunch at, the 30 minutes on the dot sharp?
yeah.
Are you sure they're not taking an extra 5 minutes?
Right.
Are you sure that they're not taking an unauthorized smoke break when you're not looking? When you have a department that big, it's hard to be able to know who's who, because let's face it, it's the one job you're not supposed to be bad at. But
Yeah.
raise your hand if you've never done a bad job or have never done anything. I mean, I've never done anything terrible in Mavradio ever. I
Yeah.
will put that out.
Yeah. Me neither. Yeah.
Yeah. We're perfect angels in Mavradio,
Right. Yeah. Perfect.
and we
We
will.
got our
Yeah,
halos in the book bag.
yeah. Besides, this is not a fortress. There's not thousands of people that we can hide behind.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Mm,
everything we say and do is, going to be looked at. I mean, we're doing this
yeah.
in front of a
Yeah.
global audience, but it's hard, to really understand that he's trying to do something satirical. It
Mm,
is offensive,
mm,
and some of it can be looked at as glorified homicidal behaviors
mm,
toward the police officers.
mm.
But at the same time, though, you got to remember he played a cop
Yeah.
in New Jack City, and he plays a cop at Fintutuala in, did I pronounce it right? Fintutuala in Law and Order SVU. So he doesn't entirely hate every guy with a badge.
No.
He just wants accountability for the ones that don't do their job.
And
And
that's a reasonable thing to ask.
yeah, not to say that we can defend some of these lyrics, because
Yeah.
they're I mean, he came in with evil intentions
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
he went into that
I mean, we
studio.
have to admit, if you're a woman, like, some of these songs are gonna hit different. If you're a female listener. Now, we shouldn't do blanket statements.
I
Certain
wouldn't want
female
any
listeners,
self-respecting woman listening to this album.
mm,
It's I think if they do listen to it and they have the choice to listen to it and everything, just know what you're getting into.
yeah,
It's just just like it's the impetus of new metal.
yeah,
There's a ton of misogyny in this album. And like I said, I don't listen to it a whole lot. I can't.
mm,
But it's such an album of choice because this was such an offensive record that's just became such a ripple in pop culture that later it became a tsunami with all of the sophomoric nu metal bands that came afterwards and totally changed the style. Even though they sound worlds apart, like every other Body Count album that came after this never sounded like the first,
Mm-mm.
you know. But that's okay though, because he wants to make those records, and
Yeah.
he knows that he's not going to make another one like this one.
This
He's
is
doing
a
it because he
one.
wants to.
This is kind of like a once in a while, like this. Like I would say, you know, it taking the context back then. This is just a perfect debut. You know, it made it. We said it's a graphic record, but I feel like it made statements that needed to be made, and it was in line with the time. You know, it opened up people's eyes to some things going on. So, you know,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think,
great record.
yeah, I think it gave a lot of people permission, to say, you know what, Body Count did it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put out a record, say whatever the heck I want.
Well, yeah, cool. Well, do you have so I always like to do this before closing. You know, what are like maybe give me your top track from this record, and if you
There goes the
had
neighborhood.
right there you go. And he belted it out, listeners. He knows it.
There goes the
Uh
neighborhood. That
and
is
who
the song that defined Body Count. That riff is not Winger 17. You
right,
hear it, you know exactly who Body Count is, what
yeah,
they're about. You listen to those lyrics, and you don't need to be asking a second question because you know
nice,
what they are. You love
nice.
it or you hate it,
Read it.
but that song, There
Nice.
Goes the Neighborhood, is Body Count.
Lasting legacy of this record, if you had to tell listeners, which I guess you already said, but do you want to add anything else? So
The I mean, it was such an incredible legacy that came from this one. The original letterbox
mm,
that contained the Cop Killer song,
mm,
unsealed, I see on eBay going for about $300.
ooh,
It's a very rare thing. Sometimes you can find it, but if you find a copy with freedom of speech on it, it's still worth owning because that remix,
yeah,
I think, was even stronger than the original mix. And that's another one that I want to give as far as, a track that everybody should hear. The Freedom of Speech remix by Body Count, you know, not only defined who they were, but it was a major response to how everyone else responded to them. Ice-T knew when he got into it that it was going to make a lot of people angry. He wasn't looking for everybody to say, you know what, I really see where you're coming from. He knew that wasn't going to happen. So he knew already in his arsenal, he had that song and he used it. And I guess, rock and roll was never really the same ever again.
mm-mm,
And because, after that, we had bands like Rage Against the Machine, House of Suffering over in San Diego. We
mm,
had, geez, it just opened up an entire realm of possibility for hip hop and rock and roll to have some sort of marriage.
mm,
Granted, a dysfunctional one.
yeah,
This is not a Cosby show marriage. So
mm-mm,
anybody that is looking for the happy-go-lucky marriage of rap and rock, you have Sugar Ray to
yeah,
lean on. But
there you
if you want, if you want something, that is just pure, absolute, unapologetic rebellion, that's Body
body
Count.
count is it? Yeah,
Granted, you might even be offended as well.
yeah,
There's some songs that I don't jive with. It's
yeah,
not um it's not an album that's a 5-star listen to me. I could listen to Slayer, and listen to like Rain and Blood, stuff like that, and totally be feeling it. Body
mm,
Count, there's a couple of songs where I would need to be in the mood for it, but at
yeah,
the end of the day, this was a snapshot
yeah,
of, the time where people started to really say, hey,
Mm.
because you look at it now, this day and age where we have so many songs that are just uprising,
Mm.
rebellion, resistance. Uh, this was kind of like an impetus for the resistance, because unfortunately, all the problems that existed on this record, we're still dealing with it 30 years later.
Yeah. I would say my highlight track would be Body Count. And the reason is I am a nerd for any cleverly written song lyric or movie line, and just that allusion to the Cosby Show is so simple, but it says so much about the differences. And it touches on lack of getting out of the that type of neighborhood. I don't think a lot of times you don't hear protest songs make a distinction about socioeconomic status and race. I mean, like we touched on earlier, if you're a African American kid of a lawyer and a doctor, that's gonna look different than being a kid of a single mother who's African American. And so I feel like this song was touching on talking about that. It's hard to be the Cosby's, people. So love
Yeah,
it, love it. The legacy of the record, I definitely would say for me is that just bringing issues to the forefront. And I think at the time, hip hop needed that. I understood Hammer, Kid and Play, that was fun, but we can't dance all the time, right? Like stuff
no,
needed to be said, like, just and making a great record that is a rapper, not just trying to do a rock record for rock's sake. So,
yeah.
those are my legacies of the album. So I
Well,
agree
Jerome,
with you though.
yeah.
I
No, no,
agree.
yeah. Go ahead.
I agree with you though. I was the new metal, yeah, like ugh.
I hated it from day one.
Yeah,
Big up to you for picking Body Count though, as
yeah,
because that was a hell of a track.
yeah.
That riff,
Oh,
I
love the riff.
true story, and this
Yeah.
is this is no lie. I wanted to actually try to edit that down, but and I went through the trouble of actually sitting in front of Adobe Audition to try to edit down, and it was like, man, there ain't no song. There's just a Body Count is an album that Mavradio will never play, and if anybody
Yeah,
ever tries to play
yeah,
Mavradio, there will be no more Mavradio.
right,
So the only way you'll ever hear it, it's not going to be on Sub-Zero, and
right.
it better not be on any of your shows because I like being here, Jerome.
Yeah, no, I love you too. I hate to do a little plug, but I'll do a plug. We're hoping to do Joy Division before the end of the semester too.
Yeah. So yeah, we put on Body Count. If I put on Body
Yeah,
Count tonight, then
yeah,
this is the last thing you'll ever see us
yeah,
do.
right. We're both getting calls from not only Joe Dean, but everyone at Mad Radio.
Yeah, Jack McGonigal's gonna take a couple of baseballs from Tal Anderson and throw it at throw it at me. So I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, it's
yeah,
I'm gonna ruin it for everybody. But
yeah. We won't do that, listeners. We won't. We love discussing these albums. We love listening to Sub-Zero. We love the stuff that's coming. His interview with the Hotman sisters. So
yeah.
we love it. We
And
love
we
it.
love it when Jack McGonigal doesn't throw things at the AC.
Right,
So
yeah.
we're gonna keep it chill.
Yeah.
But
We gonna keep it chill. Yeah.
we mentioned Jack one too many times today. Hi, Jack.
Right, yeah.
No,
He must be talking about us. Like
no,
I gotta
no.
try to get him on an episode too. So yeah.
He loves
Yeah.
country. He loves
Oh
country.
yeah. I can
Uh,
dig into some country roots for sure.
yeah, but yeah, Body Count.
Yeah.
It's not a hard album to find on the
Uh,
internet these days, but if you run into a copy of it, it goes for a lot,
yeah.
especially the version with Cop Killer.
Yeah.
I personally don't want to own it because I don't like having physical copies in a studio
Yeah.
apartment, but it's a time capsule
Yeah.
of a 1992 where everybody was gasping at anything that they deemed offensive.
Yeah.
This day and age, um, we do have Ice-T to thank for kicking that down
Yeah.
even further.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining me today, man.
Thank
Thanks,
you. This
guys.
is
Yeah.
always fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Listeners, thanks for listening to Jerome's Music Journal, and hope you enjoyed it. And go out, listen to that body count. Like we said, it's a time capsule, so go out and listen to it. See you on the next episode, guys.
Power with.
Power with Mavradio.